All right, let's bring back the dynamic duo of Geoff Ulrich and Pearce Dietrich, because we need to talk a little bit of win totals here, guys. And the Raiders, looking at them, starting with the Chargers, Cardinals, Titans, Broncos, and Chiefs before their bye in week 6. That's unbelievable. So, Geoff, they may be chasing that 8.5 win total after the bye. Will we know what kind of team the Raiders are here at their bye in week 6 rather?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll know what type of team they are, but I think that what type of team they will be is a fairly competitive one. You know, I'm not looking for the Raiders to necessarily pull the upset and win their division. This is a team that they went 3-3 straight up in their division last year. Like, they have a quarterback in Derek Carr who gives them a chance. And now they have a wide receiver in Davante Adams who's going to allow them to keep up against some of these other high-powered offenses. I like what they've been doing on defense. I think they're still a little bit thin at certain places like corner, but you know, the first 6 games or so look rough, but they also get the Jags, the Texans, and the Saints in 3 games in a row after that. I think this team is going to be competitive enough to hit this over. It's probably not what I'd call like a top 2 or top 3 bet for me on the board right now, but I don't really want to take the under on this team. I think with Derek Carr providing that stability, with Davante Adams coming in, I know it's a tough division, but I think this Raiders team really could like push for a potential wild card spot.
Yeah.
I like them enough to take the over at 8.5 at the very least.
But Pearce, that offensive line still has to protect Carr and give him time to deliver to Davante Adams.
They do, and we don't really need 6 games. 2 will probably do. If that offensive line's playing well, and more importantly, if Adams and Carr have a connection, we'll know within the first 2 games where this offense is going to go. And if they struggle in those first 2 games, maybe they'll figure it out. But if they struggle early, I don't expect Waller or Josh Jacobs really to carry this team. We saw this offense struggle last season, and really it all hinges on Adams. Yes, we need offensive line play, but if Adams is the same guy that was with the Packers, then I'm with Geoff. This team goes over the 8.5.
Well, Pearce, the Patriots win total also 8.5. They end the season against 6 teams that finished last year with a winning record. Where do they need to be before week 12 in order to hit that?
The thing that stands out for me is if you look late in the season with the Patriots, they have 4 primetime games in a row. That's an interesting stretch. I don't know of any team that really has to play those. I don't know if New England is particularly good in primetime, if they're bad in primetime. But when I look at that, you know, basically from Thanksgiving to the week before Christmas, all these night games for New England, I think that's where it's going to be hit or miss for this team. And ultimately, I just got to side with the Patriots figuring it out. It's what they do. Yeah. Maybe they're one of the teams that asked for these primetime games. Maybe Belichick knows it's some sort of advantage for them, and this is going to help push them over that total.
All right, Geoff, in order for this to happen, the number one thing that needs to go down, Mac Jones has got to make that second-year jump.
Well, I mean, the Patriots are a weird team to bet against right now because it's the Patriots. It's like Pearce said. They just seem to figure things out. You know, last year, they were bringing in a rookie quarterback. Everyone was like, well, I mean, is this the year they finally fade off? And they got 10 wins. They don't have those easy cake wins against the division anymore necessarily. I know the Jets are still there, but like Miami's kind of like a more legitimate team. And obviously the Bills are the Bills right now. So that's where you kind of have to factor this in. But it's not really a win total at 8.5 that I want to fade necessarily because the Patriots, you know, when it comes down to crunch time, they just seem to figure things out. If the run game doesn't work early in the year, Mac Jones will take a little bit of bump up and they'll start to air it out a little bit more. So I'm not really in love with this team necessarily, but it's not really a number I want to fade either. So, you know, the Patriots ultimately probably a team that I'll just not bet, but you asked me which side to take. Yeah. I mean, 8.5 feels a little bit low for a team in the Patriots who have been really putting together decent seasons with not really great rosters lately and still getting it done in terms of just hitting their overs and stuff like that.
It's also interesting because you have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. Their primary backgrounds are defense and special teams, and they're taking on lead roles on the offensive coaching staff now that Josh McDaniels
getting
has
Matt Patricia away from the defense is probably a good idea. So
yeah. All right, well, I know Detroit agrees with you there. Ravens faced off against the AFC East. We mentioned this earlier in the show. First 4 weeks of the season, they had an 8-9 record last year, so they get the easiest schedule in the division. Geoff, are the Ravens a prime candidate here to go from worst to first and hit the over 9.5 wins?
So the Ravens are definitely a candidate. The Ravens are a team that I think have a lot of volatility with them. I think their upside is definitely there. You know, if Lamar Jackson stays healthy, they can get their running backs healthy. If the secondary stays healthy, that was a huge thing for them, and the O-line. So there's a lot of things with the Ravens where you look at this team and say, okay, there's upside there. If everything goes right, if they get this offense flowing again. But like, let's not forget that this team was terrible last year down the stretch. They didn't just fade, they cratered. And if that team shows up again and there's a couple injuries, like, this isn't really a total at 9.5 I want to go over on. You're also paying the juice right now. Like, it's minus 140 on the DraftKings Sportsbook to go over 9.5 wins for the Baltimore for the Baltimore Ravens. I just called them the Cardinals for some reason. Yep. But the main thing is here, this isn't a team that I want to chase right now. They're just getting too much heat. Everyone seems to just be high on Baltimore. Yeah, they're going to bounce back. I don't think that's necessarily a sure thing. And I think people are also overlooking the fact they play in the AFC North. You've got 4 competitive teams there. I don't care what people say about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh always is like the Patriots. They're probably going to be at least around 500 and a tough matchup, especially when you go to Pittsburgh. So no, I actually am fine with fading the Ravens and maybe even looking at the under, just because the juice at minus 140, it's just not worth it right now for a team that's in a very competitive division for me.
Well, Pearce, if they can stay healthy, like, remember last year they lost like 3 running backs within like days of each other. If they can stay healthy, it's a huge if for every football team. Like, how much do you like the over?
It's an if for them to stay healthy, but yeah. I mean, it's not a huge if to say, hey, maybe not our entire team gets injured. It wasn't just a couple injuries. They lost everyone. Yeah. They lost their star running backs in the preseason. They lost offensive linemen. And then that led to Lamar Jackson being hurt throughout the season. That was their identity. Take what they do and completely remove it. Of course, they're not going to win any games, but they still managed to win 8 games last season, despite all of the injuries. And that doesn't even bring up the fact that their secondary got injured, and then the backups in the secondary got injured, and the backups of the backups. They ran out of people in the secondary. This team was decimated. So it's not an if to say, well, half of them get injured. They still could have a good season. I think it's a testament to how good they were to win 8 games with that roster and how good of a coach John Harbaugh is. We don't talk enough about how good of a coach he is to win games with that roster.
Yep.
I think they're definitely going to be a worse to first team.
Yeah, that was their first losing season since 2015 and halted a 3-year playoff run. Hey, we've had the draft, guys. We know the schedule. Which team win total are you locking in now? Need you quick on this one, Geoff.
I'm locking in the Detroit Lions over 6.5 wins. You're still getting plus 110 on it. Look, this schedule is great for the Lions. I won't go over it because we want to be quick, but I really like that. I'm going to lock in the under on the Arizona Cardinals, minus 120. They start with the Chiefs in 2 games against the AFC West. Then I also like the over 9.5 wins on the Philadelphia Eagles. I already mentioned their schedule. I love it for them.
You're locking in that Jacks over, aren't you, Pearce?
I absolutely am. Jacksonville has gotten better. They've got young developmental players that are only going to improve. They filled all their holes. Look across that division. None of the teams in the AFC South got any better. They've got a shot at this.